Was there any consideration into their bowling action when they recruited them?
When we recruited, that's a good question. The bowling action was most of them they had their side-on type of action. So strictly we didn't want to include or exclude based on the bowling action. But most of them had this side-on, and some of them had front-on, but none of them had the mixed type of bowling action, which is supposed to be more injurious.
And was there any reason behind the participant numbers being to 10 or?
It's because of the expense of the test.
Okay.
Because it's more expensive.
Okay.
Otherwise, we have hundreds of bowlers,
Okay.
but it takes a lot of labor and cost. Yes.
Cheers. Thank you.
When you sponsor the thing from your university, we'll do more.
Sure. We'll work on that. Huh?
Yeah, sure. Yes, please. Yes, sure. I'll exit.
Hi, thank you. Just on the back foot impact, would it not help measuring the internal rotation of the back hip, so that would limit the hip shoulder separation?
So the hip alone you meant, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And your back foot impact, going to be internally rotating your
Yeah.
back hip more.
Yeah, rather than going to segmental things, we wanted to look at the whole bilateral hips as the hip shoulder separation angle. So we took the vectors and we hope that that would take care of the internal rotation aspect also. So
perhaps that would increase the power of the bowler more,
yeah,
and encourage him to prevent the excess separation.
that seems like a good suggestion. We might try to include that in our next study with our New Zealand friend. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
We have Dr. Nitesh Gahlot.
Good evening, everyone. So my topic is basically addressing the shoulder injuries in fast bowlers. We have very limited data in the literature. We have very few studies who specifically address the shoulder injuries in fast bowlers, and they are fairly recent one. Although a lot of research has been done, and we have very good speakers earlier also who have talked about the shoulder injuries in cricketers per se. But addressing these issues in fast bowlers, specifically studying the fast bowlers, have been very less. So I had to extract a lot of data out of the individual studies who have covered overall bowlers or overall cricket injuries. So my aim of this presentation is to use that literature and how to use that literature and understand, and then try to prevent those injuries in the new athletes, new cricketers who are just starting their career, so that we can tell them that don't do these things, because you are at higher risk of injury when you do these things, and you better start when you start to change your action. For example, you do when you are using your new action, then you do these things, and you will have less injuries in your career. Some introduction. Shoulder is definitely the most common injury location in the upper limbs, but all this not that common as we have already been told. A lot of sporting activities are happening nowadays. These injuries can be a career-threatening injury to an adolescent cricketer who is just starting his or her career. The upper limb injuries constitute about 29% of all injuries. These are according to the meta-analysis published. Shoulder injuries are around 5 to 36% of all injuries in the cricketers, and these range from mild shoulder pain to severe career-threatening injuries. Bowlers and fielders, they are the most commonly affected because they are, the forces acting on their shoulders are higher. In Australian data, the bowlers have roughly 3 to 4 times of shoulder injury prevalence as compared to the batters. The spin bowlers tend to have more injuries as compared to the fast bowlers, because when they are bowling, their arm rotates inwards. That's what predisposes them to shoulder injuries. Among the fast bowlers, the front-on action definitely has more injury chances. And then spinners, the wrist spinners, as compared to the finger spinners, have more shoulder injury chances. Probable causes of these are because during the overhead throwing action, the shoulder complex acts as a regulator of forces which are being transmitted from the lower limb to the upper limb. High velocities are definitely acting on these, and there is a frequent repetition of overhead throwing action, and these causes severe stresses and transfers a lot of load through the shoulder joint. In the wrist spin bowlers, they tend to rotate their bowling shoulder internally when they're bowling. So that's what causes the injury in them. The usual mechanism is repetitive overhead activity that causes stretching of the anterior capsule and tightening of the posterior capsule that leads to the glenoid interrotation deficit and or rotator cuff tears or anterosuperior humeral head migration. Increased externrotation, decreased interrotation, abnormal kinematics, and then causes shoulder pain and injuries. Some injuries, briefly, I will talk about. One is the micro instability or subtle instability, which is an acquired type of laxity. It has been described by Neer in their study. They say that this is because of the repetitive capsular laxity. The shoulder first starts subluxating. It does not go directly into a one-time dislocation. It starts subluxating and eventually it goes into a dislocation when the capsule is very lax. Then there is superior labral anterior to posterior tears. The labrum is basically a structure inside the shoulder joint that controls and acts as choke block for the dislocation of the humerus. These studies are basically have been done in the Western countries. They have been done on the baseball pitchers. They are basically because they have to severely externate their arms in the cocking phase of their throwing action, and then they do a sudden internal rotation. So when they're doing the cocking phase of the throwing action, when they're doing external rotation, that causes the internal rotation. Also, it stretches the biceps tendon, and that pulls out, that peels down this labrum with it. That's why it's called as a peel-off lesion. Rotator cuff tears occur specifically in the acceleration phase because the internal rotators have to act concentrically when you are starting your throwing action, and the deceleration phase when you have thrown the ball, and then the accelerotator stops your arm from going with the ball. So you have something has to stop your arm. So that are the accelerotators. That's why all these muscles, they act in different phases of the throwing. This is the internal impingement and the severe acceleration in the posterior part of the shoulder. When you are in the cocking phase, when in the extreme of acceleration, the posterior part of the gator trochanter impinges on the posterior part of the scapula. That we call as the internal impingement. Then there is glenohumeral interrotation deficit. Now the difference between the normal range of motion and the deficit is very important to understand. When you have GIRD, your interrotation is reduced. But the total range of motion can shift in some players. Some players might have increased externrotation and reduced interrotation. That can be genetic, that can be a physiological also. That is not GIRD. The GIRD, you have only reduction of the internal rotation. The scapular dyskinesia is very common, is more common in sports who need more bulk of the muscles, like weightlifters and who need more muscle. They have very commonly associated, but it is also seen in fast bowlers because then when they're bowling, the scapular peripheral muscles are very useful. When they're moving their arm through the whole range of motion, the scapula also goes through that motion. So the periscapular muscles are very important and they cause the scapular dyskinesia. The bowling action is very important when we're talking about adolescent pace bowlers. They bowl approximately around 55 balls per match and more than 100 deliveries per week in a season. And the bowling action is highly dynamic. And they transfer a large ground reaction force when they are landing, and that ground reaction force is transmitted through the trunk, through the shoulder, to the arm, and then to the ball. So that those ground reaction forces are very high. So these ground reaction forces, they cause a non-contact injury in the pace bowlers. And that is as opposite, it's opposite to the fielders who have direct contact injury. When they fall on the ground, they have a direct contact injury that causes other type of injury like shoulder dislocations. The bowlers, they get a non-contact type of an injury. So these are that is very important to understand. Using these knowledge, we have to develop an injury prevention program. So injury prevention program all has the rehab facilities for whole body. It is definitely not focused only on the shoulder. You have to address the whole kinematics of the player. But I will focusing only on the rehab of the shoulder for this for the benefit of this talk. The exercise-based injury prevention program can reduce the injury risk by 32%. And the resistance exercises for external rotation have been shown to be the best method to reduce the injuries in fast bowlers. And when you gain a significant in the eccentric external rotation shoulder strength, that stabilizes the shoulder very much when doing the throwing action also, and while doing the releasing the ball during the fast bowling. The aim is to modify the muscle strength deficiencies. The poor dynamic neuromuscular control has to be improved, and you reduce muscle endurance has to be improved. The following points should be considered when designing an exercise-based injury prevention program. The exercises have to be simple so that the coaches in the smallest town can understand and the athletes can understand them easily. You need to use a minimal or inexpensive equipment. The exercises should be like that. You don't need an expensive equipment because that is the problem specifically in our country where 70% of the population still lives in the smaller towns. You need to include dynamic exercises which can also act as a warm-up exercises. It has to be time efficient because you cannot ask the athlete to train whole day. You have to limit the time. You have to give the athlete a recovery period also. You have to make a session fun and enjoyable because repetition is very important for all these exercises. The athletes have to train daily, at least day in, day out. So it becomes boring after some time for everyone. It has to be fun and enjoyable. The recommendation for shoulder, according to these, the potential risk factors are the reduced action rotation strength and the shoulder strength imbalances. So our injury prevention strategy should be resistant band strength training exercises for this. Now, few activities are high risk, few activities are low injury risk. When you are asking an adolescent new player, if they both low and high absolute external loads, that means they are both at risk. Less than 123 balls or more than 188 balls per week. In a study, these were shown. This is a very specific figure because this was the outcome of a study. It can be plus minus sometimes. Per week, both low and high are high injury risk. It has to be in the middle. Between, if they're balling in between, then they have a low injury risk. Now they come to training load. If they are training for less than 2 days or more than equal to 5 days, rest they are taking between the bowling sessions, then there are high injury risk. 3 to 4 days is optimal rest between the bowling sessions. If they have a high acute load, they suddenly bowl for a longer session, longer bowling overs, or moderate acute loads with a coupled with the low chronic loads. They are bowling from on a longer spells, but in between they are bowling at a faster speed, and those bowling overs are clustered together. They have a high injury risk. They should aim to avoid spikes in their load, and moderate to chronic loads are beneficial and carry low injury risk. This is the recommendation given by the Australian data on the bowling number of balls and the maximum overs per spell, maximum overs per match, the target deliveries per week, and the weeks of pre-season, how much they train according to the age of the adolescent players. So this is what the Australian data they have advised when you are training your adolescent fast bowlers. These are my references. These are taken from the data from the mainly from Australian and New Zealand registry of the cricket players. Thank you.